too north to be south, too south to be north. Where I'm from, Virginia, of course, too south to be north, too north to be south. What it's like. Hey yo, it is what it is. Yeah, hey yo, what it is what it is. It couldn't be nothing else. We brought down place off the satellite buildings and appreciate the green.
Jason?
Yes.
Hey, what's going on, man? It's Andy Kyler.
What's up, Andy?
What's going on, dude?
Hanging, brother.
Just wondering if you were busy, had time to talk music for a little bit.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. What do you think of the podcast so far? What you've seen in the Facebook site?
Oh, I think it's excellent, man. You updated the photo today with Andy.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah.
Have you talked to his mom at all?
I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really know Andy at all myself back in the day.
He passed. I mean, I only had the privilege of meeting him seeing him in a couple shows and then talking to him, here just once or twice before he died. So
yeah,
I can't even.
I was pretty young.
Yeah.
Back then. But I did get a chance to talk to Jerry this past weekend, Barrett. And so I got a lot of stories from him about his time in LDK and about Andy, and it was really good. It was good to hear all about LDK, and to really get the story from somebody that was in the band itself.
Yeah. It was for me. It was, I don't know, I kind of, it came at the tail end of that, only seeing him play maybe once or twice, before he passed. And for me, it was definitely, I think, a veil more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing for me is I never even got to see Avail during those times. Right. I was more familiar with the version of Avail from their time in Richmond.
Gotcha.
And just, hearing like, hey, here's this band. They came from Reston. They're making it kind of big in Richmond.
Right.
Check this out. And so a friend of mine made me a tape of them, and I was like, holy shit, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
So as with a lot of groups, I didn't get a chance to see a lot of these groups in person. I know these groups from my imagination, from their demo tapes, and not even from the original tape, but of bootlegs of their demo tapes.
Well, that's the way. I mean, that's the way it happened. That's the way.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's how they were created.
Especially, it's not like you can be like, oh, I'll shoot you the MP3 and just have somebody email it to you. It doesn't. It didn't work that way. It didn't work that way then. You had a tape, or your buddy had a tape, and you brought a blank tape over to his house and sat there and listened to the demo in its entirety as you were recording it.
Totally.
We made compilation tapes and mixtapes, for each other all the time. I mean, that's how I found out about a ton of bands.
Yeah. I mean, I remember going over and just going through people's collections sometimes and making mixtapes there with them. Being like, oh, I'd love some of that. And I'd like that song. And, just going over and making a mix out of somebody's collection, basically.
Oh, absolutely.
With the double boombox. One of the dumbest things I ever did was a few years ago, I still had a double boombox. In fact, I had two of them. And they were sitting in the closet for a while, and my wife was just like, what, these things are taking up space. Why don't you get rid of these things? And now I'm just like, oh, I could still be duping tapes for people, which would be awesome.
Yeah, except that then you give it to them and then they don't have anything to do with it. That's right. Somebody asked me the other day if I had a VCR. And I was like, oh, wow, no.
I don't know. The kids are getting into tapes again.
Well, yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, I think it becomes nostalgia at some point. And I certainly love new music technology. It's been amazing for me and what I've done in my career, certainly. But it's different, it's different. It's a part of the culture that doesn't exist anymore. And look, in another generation, it's going to be something, totally different. And what the kids are doing now is not going to be part of the future culture. So, that's
I know it's kind
evolution.
of amazing. It's kind of amazing to think about what that could potentially be.
I saw a interview recently with Roger Moretz, who's the lead singer of Agnostic Front, and talking about being the godfathers of hardcore and really being involved still and being kind of respected and revered and this lovable grandpa almost. But the phrase he used was, "It's not my party anymore." It wasn't that he wasn't part of it or excluded. It was, it's the new generation's party. It's their party. It's their turn to celebrate and make their mark and, whatever they're going to do, however they're going to get into it, however they're going to do the music. It's not for him to host or dictate that anymore. And I just thought that was a really good turn of phrase.
From the East Coast to the West Coast, gotta go. True sounds of a revolution, gotta go. In our hearts and in our souls, gotta go. United we stand, divided we fall, gotta go. Take a touch with you or me. Gotta go. These sense of security. Gotta go. Want to live my life for me. Gotta go. Why can't they just let me be? Gotta go. Say I'm crazy. Just brain dead. Planting thoughts within my head. Can't believe what I've seen. What has become of me? What has become of me?
Yeah, but what I mean is like, and certainly it's not really our party anymore, and I feel like the old guy at the party, or feel fairly unwelcome at the party. But I just mean that now the thing is streaming, and streaming is what's happening, and it's what's saving the whole music industry right now.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's no tangible form for this music anymore, really, or doesn't need to have any kind of tangible form. I mean, it's a file somewhere, but you don't even have to own the physical file,
No.
to listen to it. So, what else is there other than beaming it directly into your brain?
Well,
Like
who
what
knows?
what are the other avenues for this stuff?
Who knows?
I know. I'm just saying that's what's fascinating to think about. It's like what's left? Where can it even go from there? I think about the music and all of a sudden I can hear it.
I don't know. I think some of the nostalgia for tapes or vinyl. I have a huge vinyl collection. It's very much like it's not just the medium. It's the fact that it represents a time and space. It's like you just said. It's not about tapes were so much cooler. It was about that experience of sitting there with your buddy and building those tapes and seeing what he had and checking out his collection. It's not just the medium itself. It's the entire time that it represents, and I think that's what people hang on to nostalgically. So,
what was the first record that you owned or that you bought for yourself?
God, I don't. It's really funny because I don't remember the first record that I bought because it happened really quickly. And what I mean is, as a fan of music, my dad had a small music collection, but he also we also used to record PBS shows, and when I say record, I mean he would put a transistor radio boombox, a single cassette tape deck, in front of the speaker of the television and record live concerts from PBS of like a lot of American folk music. So Kingston Trio, Arlo Guthrie, Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, the Weavers, all of these concerts, John Denver, and we would listen to them on car trips. So music was kind of always around. So when I first started getting into music, and we're talking the early 80s, pop, MTV, everything from, what was popular at the time that was on, that people were making, music videos. So, Video Killed the Radio Star, or Prince, or, Tom Petty, or, Huey Lewis and the News in the mid-'80s, all of that, Bananarama, going into like the Go-Go's and Orchestra Maneuvers in the Dark and Billy Idol. And there was a compilation on KTEL Records that literally had, 10, 15 songs maybe, that my parents bought me probably 81, 82, that I wore out. And I actually found it several years later on vinyl, and I have 2 copies of it on vinyl. And I'm talking about like randomly in like, a Goodwill, 99-cent bin. And it's everything from, it's like the Go-Go's, We Got the Beat, and, Flock of Seagulls, I Ran So Far Away, and Duran Duran, Rio, and, all this really kind of cool music. But they were pretty supportive, birthdays and holidays and things like, I want a, gift certificate for the record store, or, I want these tapes, or I want this, record. And they were really accommodating with that. So I was pretty fortunate, in that way. So I couldn't tell you the first one that I went and bought because it was pretty seamless. I was in record stores and music stores from jump. You're probably too young to remember Penguin Feather.
Yeah, I've heard lots of stories. I've heard lots of stories of Penguin Feather, and that's where Anita's, right? That's now an Anita's.
You know what? I don't know. I have not been back to Herndon in how long?
Yeah.
So
okay.
I couldn't tell you. It very well could be. You'd have to ask.
That's the location. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and then we were really fortunate to get Kent Mill Records at the South Lakes Plaza when that finally went over, and that I spent far too much time and money in that store.
I mean, that's where I pretty much got everything when I was young.
Yeah.
Like that was definitely the go-to until Tower opened up in Tysons. And then it was like, Tower had had it seemed like it had everything.
Well, for me, that was South Lakes was I could skate there. So I could skate there and skate home, or I could skate home from school and stop there and then skate home. So it was really convenient because I lived just a couple streets over from there. And so that was a big mecca for me. And then of course when I started driving and when we started, officially or unofficially making trips into DC, Smash was where I bought I can't tell you how many demos and 7 inches and t-shirts and posters and whatnot. It was kind of the stuff you couldn't find at Kent Mill Records, the bands that we would go see, and then their demos were all there. It was a huge thing to have your demo at Smash in Georgetown. So that became kind of the next step musically for me as far as buying stuff.
When did you start playing music yourself?
Really, pretty early. Again, my dad just having a beater guitar around the house. My dad can't sing to save his life, and I'm not talking out of school. This is a known thing in my family. So he would we used to say he would sing and the dog would sing along, like he would howl along with it. But he was an okay guitar player, especially being a fan of folk music. All you need is 4 chords. I don't know if my father knows how to play a bar chord, to be honest. So I started tinkering, probably 10 or 11 years old. I took piano lessons when I was a kid. Now I wish I had stuck with piano lessons. Just because of, we're jumping ahead, but getting into electronic music and programming and, it spurred my love for music theory, certainly. But I took piano lessons as a kid, and then by the time we got to the point where it's like, okay, well, you're going to play Chopin. I was like, no, I'm not. I had, it really lost its, I had no urge to go to play that. I wanted to play Beatles, and I wanted to play, punk, and I wanted to play, heavy stuff that I was hearing, on TV and the radio or whatever. So I started playing guitar probably when I was 9 or 10, and started, jamming and messing around with other people probably around, 12, 13. Yeah, probably seventh grade. Yeah.
Who were the first kids that you jammed with?
The first two people, and this is where we're probably going to get into a long portion of conversation with a bunch of, you and I joked about it before, about just the incestuous connection to how, how the scene was and who played with who and for what time and connected. The first people I ever played with was a guy named Eric Burke and a guy named Todd Hoover. And I played guitar, and Todd played bass, and Eric played drums. And Eric was somebody that I had known through church when I was, 8 or 9. And parents were in the military, so he moved. And then they moved back. And Eric's parents knew Todd's parents, and I knew Todd from school, and we were friends. And he was, playing bass a little bit, and at that point I was still playing guitar. And Eric was like, "Oh, I play drums." And we would get together in the laundry room, like this big laundry room in Eric's townhouse. And he lived on Lake Audubon. Yeah, Lake Audubon, and in Reston. And so we, either go out swimming or on a pontoon boat, and then do our damnedest to play horrible cover songs. And it was, it was duct tape and spit. My amp was probably 15, 25 watts, and I used to stick it on top of the washer and dryer just so you could hear it. Eric didn't have any cymbal stands, so the cracked, trash can level cymbals that he had, we actually hung rope from the rafters. The ceiling was exposed, so we literally hung rope so that he'd hit a cymbal and it'd go swinging, so we had to get out of the way. One time he hit one so hard and it literally split the stick, and I got hit in the head with a stick, just like I'm legit. It just like, whack, boom, right in the back of the head. Like, what the crap was that? And yeah, just we thought we were, we thought we were incredible, and we were horrible. We were, absolutely horrible. I remember we used to play a cover of the Cramps has a song called Garbage Man. And we used to do this really bad cover of that. I just remember every time I hear that song, we played that. Somehow or another, Eric talked his mom. She was graduating from a master's degree or something at the time, and he convinced his mom to let us play at her party. So we literally we played like 3 songs, but we weren't going to play like punk songs. So I remember we learned "Sunshine of Your Love" and a couple other songs, and they let us play for like 15, 20 minutes in the basement, and the adults all came downstairs and like watched us through the door. And I just remember Eric's father saying, I had no idea you guys could actually play.
Your first gig
until he heard us playing like "Sunshine of Your Love" and whatnot, and it was pretty funny. So several years later, and this is again just jumping around, and I don't know. This is one of those like I wouldn't say that I was, in this band or in that band. I had opportunities where I had jammed with and, did a couple practices with certain people. But there was a Jam for Man that was canceled. And I want to say it was probably in 91, 92. There was a Jam for Man that was scheduled and then canceled. But me, Carter Blitch from Knothead, Spooky, and Todd actually jammed together a couple times and made up like 4 or 5 songs. And literally we were called Madame Wolkenkreuzer. And Wolkenkreuzer means skyscraper in German. And we were sitting in lunch one day, and Spooky, we were like, hey, what's the word for this in German? And he spits out the word Wolkenkreuzer, and it kind of stuck. But I played guitar, Carter played guitar, Spooky played drums, and Todd played bass. And I couldn't tell you a lick of it. And we were literally on the bill to play a Jam for Man, and it got canceled. And we weren't serious about anything. We were like, yeah, we'll play for 20 minutes. Yeah. So that was another weird thing. That's why I don't think Todd still plays, music. He kind of went in different direction and put the bass down. And actually here's where the ancestral relationships start. He sold his bass to Nate Buren, who was the guitarist with me and Bobby Goldberg in Pot Pie that became One Fine Day. So I don't know if Nate still has that bass, but he did for many years.
I didn't know Nate played bass. I only ever saw Nate play guitar.
Yeah, he would tell you he does not, and he does not. So I think like most guitarists, you could pluck a couple of notes. He tried playing that a little bit, but guitar is definitely Nate's forte. So,
what is the order of the different bands that you went through during that time? So
well, yeah. So I don't even know. I don't think we had a name for anything in with me, Todd, and Eric. That was just us, kicking around. So it would have been, around time. I don't know when we originally started Pot Pie. It was probably in 10th, maybe 11th grade, so 90, 91. And played a couple gigs. We had a vocalist named Mike, who was an incredible visual artist. And he was the one.
Mike Reddy?
Yeah, Mike Reddy. Incredible visual artist. We had these crazy, I think we got known more for our shirts than we did for the music. And it was this crazy looking chef. And it had this kind of bubble.
I remember that shirt. I love that shirt.
Yeah, that said, "Boy, that's a tasty pot pie."
Uh-huh.
And we found a print shop, total DIY, a print shop that printed them for $5 each. We sold them for $10 each, and it was like four guys trying to hawk this stuff at lunch and whatnot. And Mike ended up, not singing for us, and I ended up taking over, and it became a three-piece at that point.
Who were the other guys that were in the band?
Nate was the guitarist, and Bobby Goldberg was the drummer. And Bobby is several years younger than us. And
Bobby was in my year.
Okay, so there you go. But already a phenomenal drummer. His brother Chris is a great musician too. And I want to say, and I may be pulling this out of the air, but I think both Bobby's parents graduated from Juilliard or something. They had music degrees, and so he was a nut job. And I still talk to Bobby after Nate. And, he was definitely 3 years younger and definitely 3 years less mature than we were, and we were already immature. So that was just a fun, time, just playing some covers and writing songs. And eventually we ended up recording a demo as One Fine Day. Nate's parents went out of town for a week. And unlike most kids who would have trashed their parents' house, we basically set up the gear in his parents' house. And just jammed for a week straight, just practiced and rehearsed every day one summer, for a week, and then went to a recording studio and recorded, I don't know, probably 10 songs. And, another quirk was when Bobby was setting up his drums and getting them all mic'd up, Nate and I went to the convenience store to get, sodas or whatnot, and Nate bought a lottery ticket, on a scratch ticket on a whim. He was like, yeah, and I was like, do you do this often? No. Ended up winning $100. So we come back from getting sodas, and Nate's got $100, and rather than being greedy with it, he ends up. We weren't going to get a bunch of copies made. So he basically comes back from the grocery store with $100 cash and gives it to the guy who's recording the demo to pay for printed labels and I don't know, however many tapes that $100 bought us. Like we were going to leave there with just like the master tape or whatever and take it home and do the dual boombox dubbing thing. And Nate was like, yeah, man, here's $100. How many tapes can we get? So our first run of, tapes were all because he got a scratch off ticket when we went out while Bobby was miking his drums.
Where did you record that?
I could not tell you the name of the recording studio. It would have been great to do something like, Inner Ear or something like that, but we weren't on that level at all, monetarily or talent-wise. So, yeah.
Well,
and,
Inner Ear recorded a lot of people, sort of regardless. I mean, I think if you had the money and you were passionate about the music and metal, you probably could record over there.
Yeah, I didn't know enough about it at the time. I think my experience with it was through Spooky and just the quality of what he put out, and of course his talent is on a whole other frightening level. So we were just not in that league, and had no qualms.
Transillion.
Well, no, I just mean had no qualms. It wasn't. No, I don't mean like, oh, Nate was going, oh, I can't play guitar like that. It was like we weren't even thinking like that we were on that level. It was three goofballs making a bunch of noise. Jamming on, circle jerks and, agnostic front covers and then writing some, excuse me, writing some, some of our own stuff along the way. And, I think our performance career, probably peaked, at like the senior, talent show at South Lakes. And actually that's how I ended up jamming with Brian from the Veil in Face First. So I ran into Brian and Sean, the guitarist, at Camp Mill Records. Hadn't seen him, wasn't real close with Brian. Of course, this is after Veil had left. This is after David started singing for Veil, and then they left for Richmond. And oh, what are you doing? Well, we're jamming on this one thing, and yeah, we're writing some stuff, and man, I wish we could find a bass player. Dude, I'm a bass player. What? And it was just kind of that conversation, and they actually came to the senior talent show and saw me play with Nate and Bobby doing some of our originals and mostly covers, and hung out afterwards and talked to me, and I ended up jamming with him. And so it was Brian on vocals, Sean on guitar, Andre Love on drums, and me on bass. I don't know what he did after. I think we jammed together probably twice, maybe three times, two that I can distinctly remember. And, I was doing so much other stuff at the time and around, and it never got serious. We never played a show, never did anything. So I know, he did stuff with it afterwards, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, it was just weird having these, moments of jamming with kind of these different people along the way that didn't really coalesce into anything. And we played a couple more shows late 92. I was at George Mason for a semester, and a friend of mine there, a guy named Andy Fisher, is an incredible bass player. I ended up roping him in so that I could play guitar in case Nate couldn't do shows, because Nate was at school. Bobby was still in the area. And I think we played one show with Andy, and I think it was at Bender's in Manassas, with Sun Monkeys, actually. Have you heard stories, or did you ever go to Bender's?
I went there once.
But that's where we could play, so,
There were a lot of clubs that we could get into.
Well, not as a band. I mean, I was fortunate this whole time to be, going into DC a lot. It's again the nostalgia of youth. It's pretty much like I wouldn't be able to get away with it now with cell phones and whatnot, with your mom being able to call you at all times and go like, where are you? What's going on right now? It was one of those like, oh, I'm telling my mom I'm going over to Kevin's house, and Kevin's mom's telling, his mom, he's going over to my house, and, oh yeah, we'll be home by midnight. Yeah, no problem. And, we were actually piling in the car and driving to Georgetown or driving to DC or going to the 930 Club or Safari or WUST West Radio Hall, which I think is now the new 930 Club. But at the time it was West, and there's a, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's a church that Fugazi used to play at all the time. And it's the basement of this church, and we used to, go see Fugazi for $5 and Nation of Ulysses and Jawbox and all these great Discord bands, and it was amazing. So we were doing that the whole time too, going in and seeing shows there, which was pretty cool.
It definitely had its effect and influence over, everything that was taking place in Northern Virginia also.
I would say definitely that it did. And I don't know what was going on in other communities, obviously not being a part of it. I'm sure that if you were to, comb the U.S., you would find similar stories to what Rest and Hardcore, was. Local concerts, couple hundred kids, because that's what you had to go to. But I don't know. In all my music travels, it was such a serendipitous kind of thing to be born at that time and live in that area. To have something that was socially conscious, community connected, such talent driven, guys jumping around between this band and this band and this band and this band. I wasn't aware of any drama at the time. I'm sure there was. I was a couple years younger, the same way you're a couple years younger than me. I'm a couple years behind, Avail and LDK. And just have it be accepted, and doesn't matter that I was a couple years younger and that you were a couple years younger. Like you could be at one of those shows at the community center and, at 12 years old, at 13 years old, for $2 and a can of food or $3 and a can of food. And that can of food thing was, really socially responsible at the time. So if you were getting into the music, the community factor and the helping each other factor was present and ingrained from day one. And I think that's something that was really unique and special for Reston, for Jan for Man, for everything around Jam for Man specifically. But I don't remember there being, and maybe I was just ignorant to it. I don't remember Fairfax having, its own hardcore scene, or going farther south and into the state having its own hardcore scene. It was very much, even Northern Virginia, really kind of, focused on this kind of, I don't know, micro environment of music that was going on. So yeah, DC definitely influenced it, and it was like, oh, we're going to the city to play a show, or we're going to the city to see a show. There was certainly that part of it, but I don't really remember anybody thinking, oh, we're part of the DC scene, or we want to be part of the DC scene. There was a contentment with like, no, we're fine being right here and happy about it. So
we're not dead, we're just rested.
Boo, that's horrible.
So how did you carry some of that spirit and some of what you learned from that scene on into, young adulthood and adulthood?
For me, it's one of those things where at the time you're just in it and you don't think about it. I don't think I realized how special it really was until you start kind of looking back. I'm not, at that time you couldn't get on the internet and compare what, my life was like as a 16-year-old kid to some guy in Peoria, Illinois' life as a 16-year-old kid. There wasn't a frame of reference. It was like, this is our existence. This is what we do here. In much the same way that, somebody in some other community, they may all rally around cars or, a specific football team, or the local high school, football being really big in high school. This was like, we were punk kids who played music, and, so it just kind of was the way it was. Looking back, if I'm going to uplift any factors, I think the social consciousness part of it, the fact that nobody was bigger than anybody else, the fact that if you were on stage, the audience was just as important. So there was not a lot of ego. There was the fact that anybody can do this. If you want to do this, you can take it as far as you want. Nobody's going to get in your way. In fact, they're probably going to support you the whole way of doing it. So having an ethic of, just doing it not for anybody else, but for yourself, and being very authentic in that, I think there's an authenticity that exists within, punk and hardcore music, that if you continue to make music in any style, if you're just making it truly for the joy of making it, not compromising in whatever your vision is, and trying to share that with people as freely as possible, I think that's something that certainly has carried through in my life, my music career, and probably my persona in general. There's a lot of stuff that says, the music of your youth, the music when you're around 16 is your life music. It's the music that you'll constantly go back to, whether you stay in the scene or stay with it. There's that nostalgia again. There's that fond remembrance of time of, keep going back to it, sitting in your boy's house, making those mixtapes, sitting on a floor, or bringing a bunch of records, or bringing a bunch of tapes over to your friend's house and going, oh, check this out. Or sitting there for hours and hours and hours on end, playing along to, your favorite records. I can't tell you how many hours I spent, with this tape or that tape or this album. I've been fortunate in my travels and in my career that I've met, some of the people that, I listened to and was actually able to share some of those stories and have that connection. And that's something that's pretty cool to me, that, I don't know, and have them receive it. Have them sit there and go, let me tell you this story about, playing in my mom's basement to hear records, and not have them think that that's either A, weird, or you're some sort of creepy stalker guy. Be genuinely like connected and attached to, what they were creating at the time. So whatever somebody else put out, and they're like, man, that wasn't our intent. It was like, we were just, making records the same way you ended up making records, or making tracks, or jamming with people, or, making a noise. So.
When did you more into like electronic music?
Excuse me. So that ended up coming. So this is where the road diverges a little bit. I lived in New York City for many years, right after high school, and Mason, and finding musicians to play with was a pain, in New York, and then finding places to rehearse and jam. You don't just put a drum set in an apartment in New York. And the thing about exactly, and we did one time with a couple guys that I jammed with, and the neighbors did not like that. So both DC and New York have, I think, a kind of unique thing where the urban, hip hop culture and the sometimes suburban, in our case, hardcore culture, kind of merge without being competitive. So, we could go to Safari Club on one night and see a heavy band, or 930 Club and see a real heavy band, and then the next night, go back and it's, and some sort of funk band, or in DC, go-go band, and not have anybody blink that we were there. And you see half the same people at both shows. And New York has a lot of that ethic too, where, you go one street and you've got some of the greatest hip hop ever, and you go one street over here and it's some of the greatest hardcore. It's the nature of that city. So I played with, friends and jamming out and things in New York, and nothing ever really coalesced. The closest I got to playing kind of hardcore and punk was a friend of mine named Norm, was the original guitarist in 25 to Life. So he was involved with them and introduced me to some, a lot of people in New York, and never ended up, playing with them. They went in a different direction, and we jammed a little bit, wrote a couple tunes, but it never got a drummer, never got a singer. I started kind of playing with sounds and keyboards and drum machines and things because it was the only way to make noise. It was the only way to make, if I have a beat, I can write a guitar part on the top of that. So I have a beat, I can play bass to that. I can write a bass line to it, either practicing or, writing out songs, because you had, just you to be able to do that. And I think there's a real distinct, at least at that time, in the mid 90s, there's a real DIY ethic in both hardcore and punk music and in hip hop. If you got a drum machine and a microphone, you can do something with that. And I started getting more and more involved in electronic music, a lot of the downtown scene in New York. There's a record store and clothing boutique called Liquid Sky, which is, if you've seen the movie Party Monster, that whole New York club kids scene, I got very connected to that when I was there. And so you had Liquid Sky upstairs, and then Temple Records downstairs. And I Met the guy that owned that, and I was working at a skate shop in New York at the time, and we used to go over there all the time and hang out. Started buying more and more records, and my cousin, who I lived with in New York, was like, "Man, I don't understand why you're just not a DJ." He's like, "You're always playing people like this weird stuff, and like you're only I have DJ listening syndrome, which means I can listen to stuff for like 30 seconds at a time, no problem. And when I play stuff for other people, I'm like, oh, check this out. Oh, check out this beat, or check out this portion of the record. And I'll never play the song all the way through." And so he was like, "You should just be a DJ. That way you can play what you want, when you want, and people will listen or not." And it kind of, sparked, imagination, and I ended up getting really into DJing.
How do we get drugs? You buy from people. What do we call a man or a boy who sells drugs? It begins with a P. Yes, that's a form of pollution. But he's a pusher. And the pusher carries a bag of all kinds of drugs. The pusher will sell you any kind of drug you want.
Here comes the dope pusher. He's got a bag of things that he will say will make you feel beautiful. Heroin, cocaine. He has some uppers and some downers, and marijuana, and all kinds of good things that will one day have you in pain and agony. Here comes the dope pusher. Here comes the dope pusher. Here comes the dope pusher. 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 Dope.
Oh, isn't that much better?
And 95, I think, probably played my first show. Actually, Coney Island High in downtown New York, which was a venue that we used to go see bands play at all the time. I saw Bale play there, I don't know how many times when they came through New York. And so kind of got bitten by that bug. And the more you're known as a DJ, if you're producing your own music or playing your own music, the better chances are that you get booked for DJ gigs and build a name for yourself. And it just kind of ended up slowly but surely rationing up from there. And I was friends with...
Were you going by your own name, or what were you going by?
No. I still to this day go by The Joker, TheJoker. And that was actually a nickname that was given to me. Joker is something that I've gone by for years. It's a nickname that was given to me by a guy in New York named Ed Salcido. And Ed was like, "Man, you're damn Joker, man. You're damn Joker." Because I just crack all the time, just making fun of him and making him laugh, and it stuck, and it really stuck. And the THE part came from the fact that when we use the word the or the in English, if we want to put emphasis on something as it being exclusive or the only, like, this is a pretty good restaurant to go to, but this place is the restaurant that you have to go to. So I intentionally added a second E. So when you say it, you can't say the Joker. You have to say the Joker. That's him. That's the exclusive. That's the apex. So that's how that kind of came to happen. Everybody's using pseudonyms and different personas, and I have a ton of electronic music producer friends that probably produce under 6 to 8 different aliases depending on what their sound is or what they want to, sound like. If the record sounds a little bit more like this, they release it under this name. They put it out under this name. But I've pretty much gone with, strictly that and kept that for all the years.
Were you putting out music? Were you putting out albums?
Yeah, I put out. Yeah. I mean, I've got several out with that. I think my first one came out in, and when I say my first one, like meaning like my first one that somebody else paid for, paid me for. Like, hi, we want to buy that from you and sell it and make money off it, which is, okay, cool. 1997, probably. And I ended up meeting some amazing people at a hacker conference in New York from Austria, and they were connected to Liquid Sky, and so I got invited to come over to Austria to play, and it was awesome. It was incredible. It was amazing. It was, unlike anything that was going on in New York at the time. And so shortly thereafter, I ended up, putting everything into storage and in New York and, living in, I thought I was going to go over for a couple months and hang out in Austria. And that ended up to about 2 years with me living in both Austria and Cologne, Germany, just making a ton of noise and bunches of music with a whole bunch of amazing different people. I had a radio show in Austria that we used to do, and was blessed to run around Europe and play, what the kids now call raves. Play festivals and raves and underground parties, and to me it was
do the kids actually
just this punk
raves anymore?
No, I don't. I have no idea what the kids call it anymore. We didn't call it raves then, so Hey, you going to the rave? No, that didn't exist there, at least for us. For me, it was the same. For me, it was the exact. It was the exact same thing as, seeing all of these, bands just making a joyful, noise. This bass player plays guitar over here, and that became this band over here, and he's playing two bands at once, and nobody's mad at each other for doing it. One band would go through a bunch of bass players, and I remember when I want to say Pat Kennedy was in Hostile Environment.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right on that? So when him and DJ switched, So Pat went and played with Aveo, and DJ ended up playing with Hostile headphones. I mean, there was like, stuff like that where there were all these great people making music with no regard for anything but we're going to go make music. And so I ended up, I'm on a ton of different records under my name or not, or just on it uncredited because we were all hanging out in the studio making noise, or, the bar would close down and we're like, okay, we're going to the studio till 6 in the morning. Okay, let's go make noise. So.
What were some of your favorite tracks or some of the highlights during that time?
As far as mine or other artists, or
just ones that you played on that you were really excited.
Well, I was really. It's interesting because in Vienna, there's a glorious, very, very talented bunch of musicians in Vienna. So there's all these people making
Virginia.
music. No, not Virginia. So for me, it was. Oh yeah, and there's a funny story about Vienna in Virginia too. Vienna, Austria. So there's a lot of musicians there, and they all make music, but they don't make music together. And what I mean is there's all of these different little camps and different record labels, and everybody went to each other's parties, and it was all very, very friendly. But once you had 2 or 3 people, like these two made music together, or those two make music together, or this guy's over here and he's kind of connected with this crew over here. And there wasn't a lot of, in my experience, there wasn't a lot of cross-pollination. Cologne, on the other hand, is everybody in the pool. There's a bunch of different camps of people from, techno to the kind of broken beat and kind of funky electronic stuff we were doing. And everybody knew everybody, and everybody partied with everybody, and everybody recorded with everybody. So it was like, if you were there, and like I said, after the bar closed and we'd go to the studio, if you happened to be there that night, you were going. You were you were there. So there was a group, and I was signed with on EMI Records called Reisdorf Force. And Reisdorf is a section of Cologne. It's the old section of Cologne. It's like the German old. The German that they speak there is different. Like a lot of people in Cologne don't even understand it. And it's also the name of the beer that we drank, called Reisdorf Kolsch, which is delicious, and I highly recommend it. But it started as this joke, like, we're the Reisdorf Force, because that's what we were fueled by, basically. And there's 5 or 6, that are of us that are kind of a core component of that. But if you looked at the liner notes for the record that we put out, there's a couple records that ended up getting put out. There's 20 people on there, probably 30 people on there, maybe, And I'm not on every track on the record, and there's guys who are like just on one track because they were at the studio that night, or So it was this amazing, artist collective. The 2 guys that were the most influential to me, I think, and the ones that I looked up to. There's a group called Air Liquide, and the 2 guys in that group, Walker and Jem. Jem is the brother of Khan. Khan was one of the people who owned Temple Records in New York with Liquid Sky. Jem was actually the one who put out my first records on a record label called Pharma Records. Ingmar, who is Walker, is the other half of Air Liquide. He owned Liquid Sky Cologne, which was a bar in Liquid Sky. So you had Liquid Sky New York and Liquid Sky Germany. Does that make sense? You following me? Okay.
Yes.
It's a little convoluted. So those 2 were a kind of very, very well-known techno group called Air Liquide. And they put out some just phenomenal, just way beyond amazing trance, house, techno, whatever you want to call it, like, in Germany and Europe. They have one song that was pretty much an anthem for me called "This Is Not a Mind Trip," and the release that's out and available is actually a live recording of them at Love Parade, which is a huge festival in Berlin.
This is not a mind trip. This is a body journey. This is not a mind trip. This is a body journey. This is not a mind trip. This is a body journey. This is not a mind trip. This is a body journey. This is not a mind trip. This is a body journey. This is not a mind trip. This is a body journey.
I got to go to Love Parade in 1995, and that was the first year it hit 1 million people. So the entire festival, they have basically all the record labels rent these giant sound system trucks, and they drive up and down this main road in Berlin, right by the Brandenburg Tor. And it's just this all-day party, and then there's parties all night at every club in the area. So they have a live recording of that song that was done at that festival that's just incredible. And to me, it's still like the standard. So.
Well, it sounds like you got a chance to be part of like 3, at least, really amazing scenes.
Oh, without a doubt.
I mean, or maybe 4 if you count like Northern Virginia is one, DC is another, New York in the mid, late 90s, and then again in Germany.
Yeah, and then and then here, in Florida as well. So, I've lived in.
So what are you doing with music now? Where can we catch you, or where can we hear you putting out that stuff?
Current. Sorry.
I said, what can we currently hear you working on?
Well, I am. It is unfortunate that I have. I'm never going to stop making music, but it's been a minute since I've crafted anything original. I play drum and bass, so I've been that's something that came out of New York and has never kind of left me. Trying to describe what drum and bass is to people who don't listen to it is kind of hard. It's so it's like hip hop. No, sort of. It's pretty much double the tempo of hip hop. So you can take hip hop vocals and cut it over the top. It's not dubstep. It's much heavier, much faster than that. Dubstep kind of is the bastard child of drum and bass. And I've never kind of stepped away from that. I've always played or been connected to the drum and bass scene. We have a night here in Tampa called a Night of Drum and Bass that we're coming up currently on our 3rd year, and that's a monthly event that we host here. My partners and I in that have been at this as long as I have. So what they were doing in upstate New York is what I was doing down in the city. So they've all been DJing since the late 90s in the same kind of scene that I was involved in, and we just get together and make a crazy noise. We call it the loudest house party you've ever been to, and bring in way more speakers than are necessary to play the small club that we play at here in Tampa, and knock bottles off the wall and generally have a rip roaring ruckus of a time. I make a lot of mix CDs, so continuous mixes. So if you go to mixcloud.com/thejoker, there's probably 5 or 6 that are up there.
One day some of the kids from the neighborhood carried my mother's groceries all the way home. You know why? It was out of respect.
Watch out, you never know the gangster, me say them in a jungle. Well, you never know the article, me say them in a jungle. Well, you never know shy effects, man, big in a jungle. Well, you never know you can watch it, big in a jungle. We tell every boy, watch it, man. Me a the nutter, original man,
I am connected with a record label called Stepping Forward and Force Recordings, and I did a label compilation for them 5 years ago, and we realized it was 5 years, and that's way too long, so I'm literally right now working on volume 2 for that. Hopefully volume 3 won't take another 5 years. And that's, musically right now, that's been kind of the focus. The main kind of connection and voice with music has been a collective group that I'm part of called Hoodie Monks. And we are a group of DJs, artists, musicians, B-boys, Buddhist monks who use hip-hop and electronic music and street culture to spread the Buddhist teachings.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a little.
I'm not sure how that works exactly, but
well, and most people aren't. That's why there's that giant pause there. What? So I was ordained as a Buddhist priest in 2014.
As opposed to a Judas priest?
As opposed to a Jewish priest or a Catholic priest. Yeah, so I am, my title is actually Reverend. So that's what it translates to in English from Japanese. So yeah, I was ordained as a Buddhist monk in 2014 in Japan.
That's the June? Is that?
Mm-hmm. That's what June is. Yeah. So if you find me on Facebook, the JIUN, that was my Buddhist name. So. Yeah, so there are people there's people who call me Jason. There's people who call me there's people that call me Joker. There's people that call me GU, and then it depends on who and what I'm talking to. But it's all the same thing. It's not aliases. It's all the same thing. So yeah, it took kind of a weird kind of my life took an interesting turn over the last couple of years. But again, if we're gonna tie it back to, our youth, that sense of community, that sense of, caring for others, you can take it as deep as you want. The rule in the pit is if somebody falls down, pick them up. So, you're always looking out for your fellow man and trying to do what you can to help take care of them. And that I guess has just been part of my ethos, my being for so long.
I think that's the perfect place for us to end here since we've gone full circle. And
there you go.
Band practice.
and what?
And because I have to get to band practice.
Oh, so you're playing in a band?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm sitting outside the rehearsal studio right now.
Oh man, that's awesome. So.
Yeah. Gotta keep doing it, man.
Brother, it's awesome. I love it. I love the fact that we could, you and I, I'm sure the listeners realize that we caught up before this, and it was just funny, like when we started talking about, like we kind of mentioned with Pat and DJ, but what happened with Avail and how that progressed, and guys from Hostile Environment over here, and you had Carter in Blitch and Knothead, and now his little brother is playing with Brian from Avail, in Ruined by Design. It's just great, man. The guys that just kept doing it and carrying on,
The music goes on and on. You got somebody's got to be the standard bearer for it,
Well, I think it's one of those things where if it resonates with you, it's always gonna resonate with you. Like I'm never not gonna do, music. We skipped over the 15 years that I spent running a Sam Ash Music and a Guitar Center. So I mean that's
around music. Like music.
Yeah. So, it's like you said, it was is serendipitous. I was born in the you know, I tell people all the time, you know, I went to high school with a Bale and Grant Hill. and depending on who I'm talking to, they'll know one of those two things. And that's
or
just,
hopefully both.
Sheer happenstance. Yeah, hopefully both, but sheer happenstance, man. So, you know, I just thanks for including me in the web show. If people have questions or if I've missed anything, glossed over, I mean, that's great. I mean, I was, I think, a fringe player and simply, you know, like I said, at the time, just happy to be there and happy to be, you know, making noise.
But you've lived a life in music.
Oh, absolutely.
And the point of this is, so many of us maybe were, you know, on the fringes of whatever the scene was. I mean, I wouldn't call myself anybody that was deeply essential to any musical scene in Reston or in Northern Virginia.
Well,
but I've lived a life in music. I've been making music ever since I was like 5 years old or maybe younger. And, you know, and I continue to make music, and I don't know what my life would be without it. I have to do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can trace it through. It's how I met my now wife. So, I mean, you know, it's all connected. But I think, you know, to put a period on it, whether we were fringe players or standing on stage, you know, with the spotlight on it, it's all part of the same thing. One doesn't exist without the other. So if there's no audience, who are you playing for? And if there's no band, who are you watching? And that's what kind of made a scene. And both of those parties respected each other, and you're on equal footing. And that's what made it great, I think. So.
Well said this whole time, Jason. Thank you so much.
Not a problem, brother. I hope you got, you know, what you need. I hope the podcast, I hope some people listen. And like I said, you know, fire at me with any questions, or I'll send you links. And if people want to check out what I'm doing, I'm glad to let you hear it.
It's really, really great to talk to you. Really great to catch up with you after all these years.
You too, brother.